Welcome to PWGC's Environmental Echo. Today's episode is a continuation of our discussion with Assemblywoman Jodi Giglio. If you haven't listened to part 1, you can find it on our channel. We hope you enjoy the episode.
We go out, we thermally test the ground too before we put these systems in to make sure, we have an idea of how it's going to react in terms of heat rejection and heat absorption and all that fun stuff. So we do design these things, right? We look out, at least 50 plus years, it's and there's not a whole lot of regulation on it right now, which maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. I'd say the bad part would be it's like the Wild West, first come, first serve, the pioneers. You just go out and if I put a geothermal system in right here, and what's my neighbor going to do? It's like a checkerboard, if it all starts popping up and, can we overload the ground or do we have to just go deeper with the next guy? So all that has to be taken into consideration. But I'm all for it. I'm all in on it.
Me too. That geothermal makes sense because you really don't need anything. You just need the original infrastructure, and that'll maintain it. But we talk about humanitarian efforts and we talk about electric vehicles, and if people only knew how those batteries were made, where you have children that are 7 and 8 years old in the Congo in these trenches mining for cobalt and lithium in order to make these batteries. Right. And these kids are dying from respiratory illnesses. They don't have any PPE. They're getting paid $1 a day and they're happy to have it. And, they're losing their lives mining in these cobalts. Now, operating engineer, I'm OSHA 30 certified, and I know that I would never go into a trench that these kids are going into and start chipping away at cobalt. But you think about that, and you think about the minerals and the sources that are needed to make these electric batteries, and then think about the disposal of those electric batteries, which we haven't come up with yet. Nor have we come up with the mechanism for disposals of wind turbines or solar panels.
Right.
So
that was also on my list. You're hitting all the topics. This is great.
So it sounds great. Yeah, we're going to save energy, but at the end of the day, what destruction is going to take place in the environment when you try and dispose of the batteries that no longer have a life? And you're hearing more of that every day because these electric vehicles came out about 10 years ago, and you hear of people just blowing up their cars because they found out that the new battery is going to cost them $30,000 and they're not going to be able to get it for months because it's coming from China.
A lot of people are starting to, the research now it's always been, how do we make the batteries last longer, better, charge faster, blah, blah, blah. But now they're also researching, what do we do with these things when they're done? How do we get rid of them? How do we recycle them, repurpose them? So I know there's been some investment in that, and some friends have been saying, if you're going to put money in the stock market, look at these guys that are trying to figure out what to do with these batteries, because if they get this right, they may be onto something. So I don't know.
Yeah, just like
I hope they do get it right.
Just like with computers, laptops, and computer parts, where they started taking away and they took the fine metals and they were finding new markets and reuses for that. So
the e-waste, yeah,
it's going to have to be. We're going to have to do something similar, but that is a good investment in my opinion. And in my opinion, if we're going to be mandating electric vehicles, we should be setting up the process right now for the creation of the batteries. Number one, the disposal of the batteries, and everything that has to do with that. UPS had, there was a pilot. There was a company from Syosset, I believe, that had a pilot to make the electric batteries for the UPS trucks. And they were going to come to Grumman. That was one of the companies that had the qualified and eligible in the meeting, that they were going to come and they were going to test it on the UPS trucks. And I think they had quite a few UPS trucks on the electric. And now they're talking about electric buses. So while we're all talking about inflation and taxes, they want to convert all the buses, school buses in New York State, to electric. So you think about the infrastructure, how to plug these buses in, number one, where they're getting that energy from, number two, and number three, how much is that going to cost the taxpayers to convert these buses when they just converted all their buses from gasoline to compressed natural gas?
Yeah, they're all legitimate environmental issues that people bring up, and there's a lot of good parts to it, but you have to take a global view of it, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, how's the electricity being produced in the first place? Yeah. Is it through hydroelectric dams? People don't like dams anymore. They want dams taken down.
No.
It's better for the fish. Is it coming from nuclear? I mean, apparently nuclear is making somewhat of a comeback in parts of the country.
I hear it too. Hydrogen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hydrogen, and that's a big one. We're involved with some people in the hydrogen end.
The green hydrogen,
that's
Charlie.
Possible.
Yeah, everything's possible. I should say anything's possible, but you never know.
You know, when I listen to my colleagues that are in the assembly and they tell me that they're, it's 220 miles to get to Albany, from Long Island. And if you have an electric car, you have to stop at Kingston. You have to plug into a supercharger for a half hour in order to make it the rest of the way. And if you thought you plugged your car in the night before, but it wasn't insecure, and you wake up in the morning and it's not charged, you're there another 8 hours waiting for that vehicle to charge. So I know New Yorkers like convenience. So it has to be, tested and tried and proven.
What happens in snowstorms, hurricanes? I mean,
oh yeah, the battery.
Long Island, we've been without power for a week.
Oh yeah, and the battery wears faster if the weather is colder.
Cold. That's right. Hot. Yeah.
So
it's
you
temperature sensitive. Sure.
You turn your radio up, or you use your windshield wipers. Anything that has to do in that electric car is going to get you. It's not going to get you as far as you think it's going to get you. So, and you think about what's happening in Florida right now with with the hurricane and all the people that are stranded, and that they imagine sitting in an electric vehicle in a line trying to get off an island with limited power.
No, it would be a free for all.
Yeah, the car stalls,
builds
builds up more traffic and back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So, Jodi, let me ask you something while we're on this topic, and being that you own your own business and the operating engineers, what about electric construction vehicles? Is that something people are talking about? Would that ever happen, going from like a diesel-type powered Caterpillar machine to...
that's one of the reasons why I voted no on the legislation for the electric vehicles in 2035, and the heavier trucks, the heavier equipment, were going to be, I think, 2045. And to me, unless you can show me that it's going to work, and you can show me that that heavy piece of equipment is going to be able to handle the power, and that they're not going to have to stop and plug in after loading 10 trucks, or the farmers with the tractors.
Yep. Same thing, or a cement mixer, turning a drum. It goes on. I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, but you brought up some good points.
Yeah, brings me back to the days when you were a kid and you bought those little, they would be Legos now, but back then it was, you had the cement truck that you'd turn. And, and you had the
Tonka toys.
the Tonka toys. And think about all that being electrified. It's just, where are you going to get all of this energy from?
I don't have the answer to that for sure.
Is
Not
there
yet.
is there enough land for solar and wind?
You mentioned that there's enough land for the solar. There's so much solar, it seems to me, on the North Fork now.
Oh yeah, because
and they've done a pretty good job of putting a buffer so you don't see it, but a lot of farmland, former golf course.
Yeah, a lot of that happened in Riverhead, and it was really to prevent the blackouts on the East End and to be able to get the power out there. But I don't know. If there were a rate discount for the municipalities that it's in, where they're losing the taxes from that industrial development, then I could see that. But it just I don't know. It's everywhere. And there are incentives to put the solar everywhere, these giant solar arrays. But how many houses are they actually serving? And it's interesting because when the county first put the solar panels, where they built the at the county center, they built the garage. It's almost like an outdoor garage where they have the structures and then they have the solar panels on top. But nobody ever thought about how often do you have to clean the solar panels in order for them to absorb the sun and the energy in order to produce energy. Nobody ever thought of that.
And initially, I know there were issues with ice sliding off.
Yeah. Yep, ice sliding off. So it definitely is a learning curve for sure.
Well, hopefully we'll make strides in figuring it out. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Because whether you believe it or not, with climate change or global warming, as you mentioned, is it happening? We're seeing sea levels rise. Again, that's have an impact certainly on the North Fork, as I mentioned earlier, with it's saltwater intrusion. There is salt water completely underneath the North Fork.
Yeah.
All right, so you've got this lens that we call it of fresh water, which is very, very susceptible and very, very precious to us here on Long Island.
Sure is.
So again, anything we can do, any type of strides, but I think we do have a ways to go before it's ready to roll this out. Is 2035 going to be enough time? Time will tell, I guess.
Yes, it certainly will. And we also have to, like I said, go back to creating businesses here that are not government businesses for manufacturing of electric batteries. And for all the parts, for all these efforts of trying to, make New York. I have 3 sisters that live in California, and they're paying $6.50 for gas. And you know what they've done is everybody works from home. So what they're doing is where you used to have these office spaces and you used to have, they're converting them into apartments, affordable housing. So you have everybody that's working from home, and then you have all the office space that the businesses no longer need the overhead. They can operate from anywhere.
Right.
We've learned through the pandemic. So all of the office spaces and the, big spaces are turning into affordable housing. My sister lives in San Diego. She said that she had an intruder last week, someone just walking in her sliding glass door, that she had to call the police. Someone that had just got away, so you would say. But they're turning a lot of these places into housing for those specific people. Look at the cruise ship that has all the Carnival cruise ship. You saw that, where they took a lot of the immigrants that had come over.
That one, no, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, they're living on a cruise ship.
Wow. That's all right. Repurposed it, I guess.
Yeah.
For sure. But one last question on the geothermal, right?
Yes.
So we talked about, residential. What do you think of like maybe more commercial scale going to like district? Like it's a utility where we hook up multiple homes or a whole neighborhood to a single geothermal system. Have you had any discussion on that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, we actually had one in Riverhead. We
Yeah,
did,
you do,
Glenwood
absolutely.
Village. That was
Yep.
one of the first ones.
Correct.
And I was actually there for that. And it was great. And they are, those 8 homes or whatever it is, they're actually benefiting from that. And their utilities are a lot less. And I think that's a great idea. I think that, I don't know how often you talk about geothermal, but I think I know what it is, but do your listeners know what it is?
If they've been following us regularly, yeah, they've heard. We've had a full episode dedicated to the technology. We did another one specific to one of our projects, which was St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan. That's a geothermal system there. So hopefully if they've listened to, maybe we do have to refresh, but we do rebroadcast occasionally the podcast too. So we try to keep them up to speed.
And now that I'm thinking about it, Town of Riverhead they just adopted a resolution on Tuesday that they're going to put a hockey rink, an ice hockey rink in EPCAL, the former Grumman facility. And they're calling me, asking me if I can get them a discount on the utilities, but geothermal would be perfect for that.
Geothermal comes with rebates from PSE&G, and if we've been talking to National Grid a little bit too, those non-pipeline alternatives. Again, I told you the gas company wants to get out of the gas business. If you can demonstrate to them that they no longer have to provide that gas service there, and the infrastructure that was going to be required to run the main and all the piping and everything, there's availability for some, financial assistance from them as well. Yeah. So there could be some real good opportunity if people are interested in listening. So
yeah, and just the idea of the state, and if you were going to make legislation, if there was an energy consumption over a certain kilowatt hour, that you would look into alternatives to see if they would work for that particular project would be interesting.
Well, we've done some. We've gotten some pretty good, sizable rebates for some customers, and it's all based on the efficiency of not so much the ground couple side, but the heat pumps inside the building. Yeah. Once you reach a certain, EER and COP, these are the mechanical engineering terms, coefficient of performance and energy efficiency ratings on the equipment, you can max out on the dollars per ton of cooling load. So it's, but again, the more efficient the equipment, the more expensive the capital costs. So that's why the rebates get, increase with the increased efficiency.
Yeah, and if you can show that the capital costs actually the capital costs balance out with the cost of energy consumption.
Oh, the energy savings, yes. Yeah. I don't mean to steal your thunder, but yes, all the geothermal systems, if you're running them heating and cooling, you can see anywhere from 40, 60, in some instances 70% savings on conventional, just regular electric cooling or oil or gas heating. We've done these analyses. It's phenomenal. Yeah,
when we were undergoing the sewage treatment plant conversion, where they were going to be watering the
Golf
grass
course.
at the golf course. It was, the first one in the nation.
Yeah, I remember that.
And now it seems to be a regular thing where people are looking to do that. I know the county's looking to do that too. But we had proposed one wind turbine on the sewer district plant that would have cut the utility costs by 25%. And everyone was afraid of the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh.
The noise?
Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? So it didn't happen, and now everybody wants to know why their utility rates are, everybody that's on the Riverhead Sewer District, they want to know why their utility rates are so high, why their rates are so high.
Interesting.
I've been involved with
interesting.
projects where there have been noise issues from things you wouldn't expect, from
Yeah.
like an induced draft fan in a chimney stack, as well as in Yaphank with the heating HVAC systems.
Yeah.
On a larger level.
Yeah. But, I mean, people are afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
But one thing with geothermal, you don't have to be afraid because it's below ground. You don't hear a thing.
Yeah.
Jodi, not to sell it too much, but that's correct. It's out of sight. There's no sound. There's maybe a heat pump or heat exchanger in the building. There's very little to no vibration.
Yeah.
I mean, the benefits really go on and on and on. So we love it.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but we worked with the city council in New York City on some of their legislation with respect to geothermal requirements.
Absolutely did. We
Yeah.
were there when the mayor, it was Bloomberg, signed it into effect.
It would be
One of the local laws.
It would be a good exercise to look at to make sure that the costs of putting the geothermal in were offset with rebates that were comparable to the original cost if you were to do it with the conventional heating and electric.
Oftentimes it's still going to cost you a little bit of money. You're not going to get the whole system funded with the rebates, but once you factor those in, the upfront cost comes very attractive compared to the conventional systems.
Yeah.
And then you look at the long-term savings down the road on the energy, and it's almost a no-brainer.
Which is why I'm thinking it would be perfect for the ice hockey rink.
That would be a good use for it, for sure.
And you don't have a problem with the end game of disposal of solar panels, batteries.
Nope. And as long as it's maintained properly, like I said, it's in the earth. It's you don't want to go digging it up once it's in there. So you might lose some usage of the land above it, but we can work around that too.
Yeah, I mean they did it with sanitary systems where they put the weight-bearing covers on them, so you could definitely do something like that with the geothermal.
Absolutely. All right, I have one more topic, and that goes to preservation of the agricultural heritage out there, sort of on the East End. As the development interests continue to increase, and it's facing more and more pressure on that stuff. How do you balance those interests versus that like I said, that heritage of the East End and North Fork?
We've seen a big changeover, and some of the low-lying vegetables can no longer be grown out there because the pesticides that would normally be used in order to preserve those low-lying vegetables during growth is you can't use it anymore. And that's sometimes gets stuck up in Albany where you have these time-release fertilizers and pesticides, things of that nature that can help the farmer and not restrict them too much. But in 2019, they adopted the Farm Labor Wage Act, where the Farm Labor Act, where they increased they reduced the amount of days that the farmer could work and the hours to 60 hours a week. And then the Department of Labor goes in and inspects the housing facilities, which is fine. And the insurance requirements for the workers that are coming either under the H-2A or H-2B visa program, they come here legally. So the farmers are paying $2,500 to a lawyer to get someone to come over. And then they may get to the border and they may say, nope, sorry, you can't come over because you have this problem or that problem. You got in trouble in wherever they came from, whether it's Ecuador or Honduras or Guatemala. So the farmers pay to get these workers here. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the H-2A program is unlimited. That's throughout the whole country. You can have as many H-2A visas. They come work on the agricultural. But the H-2B are the ones that come and work for the horticultural side and from the nursery stock and from the hotels and, the workers that you need during the tourist season. And the H-2B, I think there's 66,000 throughout the whole country that are permitted to come into the United States, and they pay taxes. Their payroll is taxed, and they come in the right way, and then they want to work 100, 200 hours a week, as many hours as they can work to send money back to their countries. And the state has put their foot down on that and said, now, they moved it down to 60 hours a week that the farmers could work, and they need a day of rest. But that's not the case in Pennsylvania. That's not the case in New Jersey. It's not the case in Connecticut. They can work as many hours as they want. They can ask for the dollar amount that they want, and they come here, they work, and then they go home to their families. And now the migrants that I'm talking to don't want to work on the farms here because the farmers have to pay $15 an hour minimum wage now, where in New Jersey they may be paying $7.50 because it costs less to live there, obviously, because they don't have the taxes that we do for all these great programs that Albany legislators come up with. But being sarcastic, but the farmers are really struggling. They really are. It seems like every single day they're getting hit over the head with something else, and now they've limited it to 40 hours a week. So anything over 40 hours a week for a farm worker, they get time and a half.
That I've seen in the news, yeah.
I mean, I sat on hearings for 18 hours listening to everybody, and if I heard 1% of the people say, that's what we want, it was a lot. And we had the farm laborers that were on the calls, and we had the farmers that were on the calls. And what you're doing is you're restricting the amount of crops that a farmer can grow because he's not going to have the farm hands that he needs in order to do it. And when you talk about, I was talking to Doug Smith. He's in the assembly with me. We bounce things off of each other a lot. But in California, you're paying $10 a gallon for milk.
Really? Wow.
Yes. And we're going to see that here. We're going to see that here as, you don't have the farm hands to milk the cows. The dairy farmers can't afford to pay the $15 an hour. I was in plenty of rallies up in Albany to put whole milk back in the schools because a lot of the reduced fat milk is getting thrown in the garbage. The kids don't want to drink it. And, the state won't put the whole milk back into the schools because of the legislation that was passed on the federal level years ago. So it's going to get harder and harder. And I was listening to a bakery owner the other day saying that she's having a hard time getting butter. So it's...
I actually heard on the radio that there's the stockpile of butter is reduced, and that there's a whole lot of factors that you're mentioning that come into play with it.
Yeah, and so where it used to cost you, so much for a dozen eggs or for a gallon of milk, it's going to cost you a lot more because the farmers are going to have to pay it, and either that or they're just going to go out of business, but they're not going to lose money. So as legislation keeps happening and, you have the animal rights activists that don't want the cows milked by the machinery, even though the farmers would never do anything, the dairy farmers would never do anything to hurt their cows. They just don't want it. They think it's inhumane. So if they don't have the farm hands, they're not going to be able to produce the milk.
Yep.
And if they do produce the milk, it's just going to cost us more. So those are the things that I'm talking about, that legislators don't think about what the end result of the legislation that they're putting on the books is going to have on the people of the state of New York.
That is very interesting. It's stuff that just does not, I'm glad you brought all this up. This is stuff we've never talked about before on the Environmental Echo. So hopefully our listeners are really getting a lot out of this today.
Yeah. And the fertilizers and the pesticides and
absolutely.
Everything. The farmers, they're having to come up with alternatives all the time as to how to...
None of us think of this. We just complain that the prices went up, that I had to go pay for that dozen eggs or that, pound of butter or the gallon of milk. We don't... The vegetables even.
Yep. And a way to discourage you from making your grass greener is to increase the price of fertilizers that you buy from Agway to go and put on your lawn so that you use less of it so that it's better on the aquifer.
Often we don't realize as consumers why these things are happening because the legislation is passed. By the time it takes effect, you forget about what happened and you don't make that correlation. But I've seen it on a local level where legislation was passed without the initiator asking what happens if I do this.
Yeah.
And that's, people that come up with this kind of legislation, they should be speaking to the farmers.
Yes.
And,
yes, they should be speaking to the farmers. There's a lot of things that are happening right now in our culture as far as inflation And as far as, crime that's in the streets, not that we're going to get into that, but, the people that are the stakeholders need to be brought to the table before the legislation is put on the books, because the people need to know the long-term effect that the legislation is going to have, not only on the producers, but the consumers.
Again, these are all interesting and pretty valid points. So glad you brought them up. And Jodi, do you have anything we didn't cover that you want to touch on before we wrap up for the day? I know you've got a busy schedule. We don't want to take up too much of your time here.
Yeah, no, I think that it's important. I mean, I know that the county and I know that the state has a lot of money for the sanitary systems, to convert the sanitary systems over to the IA systems or the bacteria systems. The bacteria absorbs the nitrogen. But, that is a big problem for a lot of people, especially in watershed communities. Mm-hmm. Where they are, they're having problems with their water quality.
Yep.
I mean, Peconic Lake Estates in my district, I had a meeting with them, and, we used to be able to get a SPEDIES permit, a state pollution discharge elimination system, approved in New York State, where you could propose a cluster system where everybody was on this one system, and then you'd pump it up, or you'd, mm-hmm. have some way of getting it all to one location and making sure that one location is monitored. And I think we need to go back to that and see a little bit more of that. And when it comes to sanitary systems and disposal of, if you can't get these 70 houses onto, sewers, because sewers are very expensive.
Oh, we know.
So if you can't get them into sewers, you got to go back to the cluster systems with the pumps.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, because regional treatment plants and sewers, to get the sewage there, are very expensive, and there's a lot of community issues that nobody wants the regional plant. What are you going to do with the water? If you do it in more manageable numbers, it can be done.
Yeah, as a pilot, like with the geothermal at Glenwood. Yeah. And, I think we need to look at more rebates for those particular things that really are self-functioning.
Every little bit will help, for sure.
Yeah.
Charlie, anything you want to bring up before we sign off?
Covered a wide range of things.
We sure did.
Which didn't surprise me, being friends with Jodi.
That's well,
for
again,
many years.
I do want to thank Assemblywoman Jodi Giglio from District 2 here on Long Island for her time today and her insightful opinions and thoughts and visions. Charlie, I want to thank you for joining us as always. And to wrap up, again, this is the Environmental Echo with PWGC Consulting. I'm your host, Paul Boyce, CEO and President. And again, lastly, if you guys need to get a hold of us or would like to get a hold of us, www.pwgrocer.com/podcast. We look forward to hearing from you. I hope our listeners enjoyed today's episode. It was, as I said, very enlightening and geothermal. I really share your passion for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I encourage our listeners, you guys, anyone out there who want to know more about it, there's tons to Google on it, or certainly reach out to PWGC. We'd be happy to share our ideas with you on it as well. And that's enough out of me today. I'll sign off, and we'll see you on the next episode.